Tonight on The Local Live, we celebrate our 200th show with newly inaugurated County Executive George Latimer. He's in our studio, ready to answer your questions in our live roundtable. The Lions Clubs of Larchmont and Mamaroneck merged to better serve our community. Local Live alumni remember their start at LMC TV and share their journey to professional broadcast journalism. For our Throwback Thursday, we have a special recap of how the Local Live began. And we also spotlight the story of one of our own volunteer reporters making it big on cable news. Good evening. It's Thursday, January 11th. I'm Michael Witch, and welcome to the Local Live. Tonight, we're celebrating our 200th show. I've got proclamations from the villages and the town and Westchester County and the state of New York. Today, January 11th, 2018, is LMC TV and the Local Live Day. Of course, we've got the local news, but in this special edition, we'll also look back on our history. On Sunday, January 7th at Westchester Community College, there was standing room only for the official inauguration of George Latimer as Westchester County Executive. Joining Latimer on stage, Governor Cuomo, New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, U.S. Congress members Nita Lowey and Elliot Engel, and State Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins. Each speaker congratulated Latimer and stressed a common theme.
We cannot allow this president and this administration to soil what we have built in over 200 years.
They want to roll back LGBTQ rights. They want to roll back environmental protections.
And at a time when America is crying out for grown-up leadership, you are providing it here in Westchester.
We've got to stand up to Trump, and we've got to stand up for us. Are we ready to do that, Westchester? Are we ready to ride this wave?
The new county executive promoted his own message of civility.
We want to treat our colleagues on both sides of the aisle and in all branches of government as partners in this continuing experiment of democracy. No Democrat or Republican, conservative, liberal, or moderate need fear that their voice will be ignored.
LMC TV videotaped the entire inauguration, and you can watch it this coming Monday, 9:30 p.m. on this channel. On January 7th, the Larchmont-Mamaroneck Human Rights Committee and the Mamaroneck School District hosted the 31st annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration. CNN commentator and New York Times columnist Charles M. Blow spoke to a packed theater about King's legacy and how systemic racism remains prevalent today. Former Town of Mamaroneck Supervisor Valerie O'Keefe received the Human Rights Award. The Lions Clubs in Mamaroneck and Larchmont, historically separate organizations, have now merged. The new Larchmont-Mamaroneck Lions Club celebrated the union last Sunday at the Sedona Tap House. LMC TV was there as President Phil Oldman announced the club's newest service project to benefit Habitat for Humanity in Westchester.
Starting tomorrow and every Monday in January, Sedona will deliver a delicious steak dinner for $6, as stated. All right. Beyond such a bargain, for every dinner sold, Sedona will donate $1, and the Larchmont-Mamaroneck Lions will add an additional $1 to Habitat for Humanity, meaning that $6 steak will deliver $2 to Habitat.
It's good to be back here. It's our 30th anniversary. We started in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, believe it or not.
You can watch the entire meeting on LMC TV. Check the program schedule on our website for the channel, date, and time. The Larchmont-Mamaroneck Lions are part of the International Lions Clubs, the largest service organization in the world, and currently celebrating its 100th anniversary. Newly elected and re-elected officials were sworn in at the January 3rd meeting of the Town of Mamaroneck Council. Taking their oaths were Town Supervisor Nancy Seligson, Councilwoman Janie Elkin-Eny, Councilwoman-elect Sabrina Fiddleman, Town Justice Ronald A. Meister, and Police Chief Paul Creazzo. Council members encouraged the public to use their voices and get involved by joining boards and commissions.
Welcome to the Roundtable. I'm Maura Carlin. New year, new county executive. George Latimer, well known to us in the Sound Shore, he's represented us at the county and state level for years. 11 days into the job, George is here to talk to us, and it's your opportunity to ask him questions, make comments as well. Call, email, or tweet. The contact information's on your screen. And before we get to him, I should just mention that we are also joined in the studio by Girl Scout Troop 1793 out of Larchmont and Mamaroneck. We've got the entire troop here, 14 girls from Rhinebeck and Mamaroneck schools. So we thank them for joining us for this interview. And George, thank you for joining us on this, our 200th show. You've given us a lovely proclamation declaring this LMC-TV's The Local Live Day.
In the county of Westchester.
From the county.
It's a wonderful day, and it's a great accomplishment. This is a terrific program.
Thank you, George. So you've had 11 days.
Yep.
Besides our proclamation and the snowstorm,
Right.
tell us what you've done.
Well, we started quickly on New Year's Day, which is officially a day off. We went in, and I had a ceremonial swearing in, and we issued executive orders. One of them was to take the names of any elected officials off of any signage going into a park. It seems like a very small thing, but these parks are owned by the people of Westchester, not by whoever the county executive of the day is. So it's a statement of nonpartisanship to take all of the county executives. You won't see George Latimer on any signage going forward.
Has that been done in the past?
No, it's a first-time effort, and I promised I'd do it during the campaign. Very simple thing to do. The second thing that I did is establish a good neighbor policy in which the county will slow down its process of making decisions on its land and have time to consult with the village board, the town board, the various local officials. And I've already visited the Mamaroneck Village Board to brief them on the program.
And what was it? What could they expect from it? Because I didn't.
Well, I think what it does is this, Maura. The county can act with its own authority. Say Saxon Woods Park, which impacts the town of Mamaroneck. We could make a decision that the town of Mamaroneck would have no say in, and we're not obliged to inform them. But now we are. Now we're responsible to provide a 60-day period so that the local government can understand it, get a briefing in front of their board meeting, and then hold a public hearing if they want so that residents can opine on it, and then they can issue a letter of support or opposition or neutrality. So,
and is this a reaction to the Playland and Westchester County Airport issues that have come up over the past years?
I think that's a good touchstone, but I believed for a long, long time, when I was a councilman all those years ago in the city of Rye, that local governments ought to be respected. Their opinions ought to matter. And so now, by stroke of the pen, I'm able to do that at the county level. So we did that on the first day.
Does that extend over the border, by the way, to Connecticut?
That does not. No, I'm afraid not. So just within the county of Westchester.
Okay.
The second day, we issued an executive order to ban the gun show at Westchester County Center. I felt for a long time, some majority of people, there are a minority that disagrees with this, that believes that a gun show on public property in Westchester County isn't appropriate. It's legal to own guns, so we're not dealing with the Second Amendment, but we are dealing with what we think are the kind of family-friendly exhibits that we want to have at the county center, and there are other things that are legal that we wouldn't want to see there. So we banned the gun show, and I think that is the popular sentiment, although there is a minority of people that would prefer to see it there.
And is that because it is technically part of the Parks Department, that it's considered a park as opposed to some other facility?
We're not really worried about the legality of it. Yes, in fact, it was part of the Bronx River Park Reservation, but it's owned and operated by Westchester County, and as county executive for the 4 years that I'm executive, I have the authority to be able to set policy that has to be adhered to by the county government, assuming it's not illegal based on a state or a federal law. Having said that, if the Board of Legislators chooses to take any of these policies and turn them into law, then it's binding regardless of who the county executive is. You've seen that in Washington. President Obama had some executive orders. President Trump reversed them. So in essence, on the gun show, I reversed an order from Rob Astorino, who reversed an order from Andy Spano, and I've actually reinstituted what was the practice before.
And you have said that you would sign the law if the
Yes.
Board of Legislators were to pass it.
That I would do that indeed. Then in addition to that, in these 11 days at 100 miles an hour, we forwarded to the Board of Legislators overdue contracts for teachers at the community college and also CSEA workers. We had a snowstorm, and we responded, I think, effectively to communicate with the public where we were in those issues. We had a discussion. We could not come to conclusion to try to bring Section 1 basketball finals back to the county center. Section 1, the entity, has made a decision to go elsewhere in 2018, but we met with them and we told them of our great interest of having them with us in 2019.
Do you know why they didn't want to come back?
Well, it's really internal discussions they had. They highlighted for us economic reasons and managerial reasons why they chose not to go to the county center. All of the negotiations they did was with the prior administration. We indicated that a new administration would look at these issues afresh, and I would hope we could come to conclusion. We're not able to do everything they want, but I think we could come to conclusion. But that will come later unless there's some other action between now and then that changes that picture.
Okay. We are going to have to wrap up this segment. We will be back in a moment, and we're going to talk about taxes and finances. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Nancy Seligson, Supervisor of the Town of Mamaroneck, and I'm very pleased to congratulate LMC TV on their local live show for its 200th airing and episode. It's a great achievement and a great accomplishment. It's wonderful to have a live show in our community for exciting television. But I also want to congratulate LMC TV in total for all of the work that they do to keep us up to date in our community with all the coverage they provide for activities, meetings, and decisions that are made in our community. And I have a proclamation from the town board to say thank you to LMC TV and congratulations to the local live on their 200th show.
Welcome back. I'm talking to new County Executive George Latimer. You can call in, email, tweet. Let's hear from you. You can ask him your questions. We're turning to taxes and finance. And for the first time in 8 years, county taxes are going up 2%. And wasn't your budget, because you weren't in office, but rather the Board of Legislators overriding your predecessor. However, critics are still tagging you with that tax hike, referring to you as a tax and spender, and expecting higher taxes. What do you say to that?
It's politics. My record is pretty clear over an extended period of time. The actual record, I spent 13 years in the state legislature. I voted for the reduction of our state income taxes, which is part of what we had authority to do twice over the last 6 years. We had to impose certain fees when we had the crisis of the Great Recession, and then I voted to rescind those fees as we went forward. I think you have to recognize that there's a school of thought that says that taxation is an evil, and we want to attach it politically to every person who is a Democrat or is part of a certain philosophy. I think people want to see value and cost put into some kind of equation. Taxes are high. They don't want to see higher taxes per se, but they also don't want to see the degradation of their community. You don't want to see Harbor Island deteriorate. You don't want to see the roads on Murray Avenue and Palmer Avenue deteriorate. So there's a balance here, and I've always tried to strike that balance. So when the critics this early in my administration predict what's going to happen in November, I think it's just politics at work.
Well, how are you going to hold the line on county taxes?
Well, the first thing we have to see more, and this is why you don't make promises about what you're going to do until you know. We have to see what the federal government is going to do. There are talk that President Trump and the Congress is going to cut domestic spending. Now, if they do that, what that means in practical terms is they may cut aid to our bus system. They may cut aid to housing. If we have those cuts, those hits to our budget, we're not going to be able to respond easily to that. In addition to that, the state government has a budget gap. It's been estimated as high as $6 billion, maybe less than that, but we have to see how the state is going to close that budget gap, and do they do it by reducing aid to counties? So prudently, you have to determine how much of our existing budget revenues are going to be there before you can predict what you're going to do at the end of the year. And that's what everybody does. Nobody sits here and makes a prediction that what they're going to be doing a year from now. You go through the year, you manage the budget well, we look for efficiencies, We look to save money in every place that we can. And if the economy rises, if we get more sales tax revenue, if we get more revenue from some other sources, then we'll be in a good position. I don't say that we have to raise property taxes. However, I also say that we're going to have to be prudent and looking at what the actual realities are on the ground before we make any decisions about what we're going to do.
Well, with the federal government's recent rollback, elimination, restriction on the SALT deduction, state and local taxes, don't you see a possible double whammy, the taxes going up and the deductibility going down?
But let's step back. That's a federal policy, and I think all of the ire should be directed to those people who voted for that policy. They took away a deduction that existed for 100 years, and they did that spitefully to hurt states that they don't believe they have a political base of support in. So that's really not turn at the local governments and pick on them. It's really what a federal decision is.
Except that you have to deal with it.
Well, of course, we all have to deal with it. But we can't make New York Texas. Let's be honest. The low taxes in Texas come because they don't have mass transit. We do. They don't have the kind of quality education that we have. So we have to be prudent. We have to look at what we're going to do. But if we start to deconstruct, close our parks, break up our bus transit because we have to get to Texas level of taxation, it's going to be impossible. You know, and if you try to compare us to South Carolina, look at the snow that we had. They don't have to budget for snow removal. So I think people need to take a deep breath and use the same intellect that they use in their professional lives. They're successful Larchmont, Mamaroneckers, people from Ryan, New Rochelle use the same criteria to judge how the government is operating, and not just operating out of emotion, which is what happens when you watch some of the TV stations that push a political point of view rather than do what you do, which is let all voices be heard.
I want to come back to that, but we do have a question from a viewer about a friend of his or hers who prepaid a portion of village real estate taxes paid it the 2018 in 2017 and later was told it isn't deductible in 2017. Is that true?
Well, as far as we know, I mean, the federal government has issued some rulings, and they're going to be challenged in court as to what was appropriate and not appropriate. As I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer by profession, the provision that was allowed that if a warrant, a tax warrant, had been issued by a local government or by any government, and it was in place, you could be able to prepay it beforehand. Now, town governments and small city governments were in a position to be able to do that. Villages whose budget years start in the spring and end in the spring, school districts, which have a similar situation, I think it's July 1 to June 30th year, were not able to do that. So some jurisdictions allowed for partial payments in advance, and a court is going to have to decide if that's legal or not. There's an assertion that they're not legal. It'll be sorted out over the next few months in court.
In the last days of 2017, the governor issued, did something.
He issued executive
order
allowed
it to be accelerated. Then County Executive Astorino said that the county didn't have time to do it. Do you think that's right?
Well, it's hard for me because I wasn't in the office at that time to know what to do. I know this much. When the governor issued his executive order, what you would do is, you know, as you do in a ship when you hit an iceberg, all hands on deck. Everybody is going to work through to see if you can get together at rapid speed all of the different warrants that have to be done. You have to keep in mind the county's got special districts as well as the general levy. But I'm not going to critique what happened. I came in January 1st, and from that point forward, it was beyond my ability to effectuate change one way or the other.
Another thing that uniquely seems to affect Westchester County from New York State is actually the mansion tax on homes. Mm-hmm. When the law went into effect in 1989, 1990, something like that, and it affected about 500 homes in Westchester, and now it's almost 18,000. Should that be raised, and is that something you're discussing?
I've sponsored a bill during my tenure in both the State Assembly and the State Senate that would change the threshold. The threshold now is a $1 million home sale. A $1 million home is practically an average home in Mamaroneck and Larchmont and Rye and Armonk and Bronxville within my Senate district and my old Assembly district. And I wanted to raise the threshold to $2 million. It'd have to be a $2 million home to be subject to the tax. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get enough lift on it. And I think now, perhaps because of this recent taxation change in Washington, I hope that the state legislature, my former colleagues, will take a look at that bill, and that will save a certain amount of money if the mansion tax is, and you know, to call it a mansion is really, you know, objectionable.
We understand around here.
You drive through Larchmont Gardens, and every home is a mansion by that standard.
We understand.
So the extra surcharge tax, I would call it.
You campaigned talking about the financial condition of the county not being what it had been spoken of being.
Right.
Is it what you expected? And I guess if it's in tough financial condition, how are you going to add some of the things that you want to add, like extra police staffing and fighting the opioid epidemic and extra TV coverage of board meetings and things like that?
Well, some of those things are low-cost items.
Okay.
Obviously, staffing the police department is not. But first of all, we're doing right now, 11 days into our term as we're having this conversation, we've asked State Controller Tom DiNapoli to send a team of people down to a fiscal review of our policies. Take a look at our cash flow, which apparently was very badly impacted last fall. Did not come out during the campaign, came out after the campaign was over.
What was it affected by?
Well, it was affected by the fact that the amount of money that we took in did not allow for us to pay all of our obligations in a timely fashion. And so we wound up with vendors that had to wait an inordinate amount of time until the next round of cash came in. And we have something called revenue anticipation notes. The revenue is anticipated on a certain date. Bills accumulate before that. But the smaller vendors, they can't float that kind of money. They need to be paid in a more timely fashion. That was a problem. Didn't surface in the campaign, although it existed. And then, subsequently it became an issue. We also have to look at our bond rating. Are our fiscal policies to the liking of the bond rating agencies, one of which downgraded us, another one put us on a negative outlook. And that's important because that governs the amount of money we pay to borrow money, the rate at which we pay. The higher the rate, the lower the bond rating, the higher the rate we pay in interest, the more money that is out of your taxpayers.
That was only one of the bond rating agencies that changed.
One downgraded us, one put us on negative outlook. And when you consider that we have a AAA bond rating and have had that for a long time, this was a rather striking occurrence. And we have a AAA bond rating because we have had 100% warrant payment by the local towns. That's a unique provision that belongs to Westchester. Very in the weeds kind of specifics.
I'm not sure what that means.
What it means is that the town of Mamaroneck has to pay 100% of the tax warrant that we send them for the county. This is what the town owns. Town pays us 100% of it right off the bat, and then they have to collect it from all the various
So they're on the hook for all the tax certs.
That is not the way it works in other counties.
Okay.
In other counties, the individual taxpayer pays their county taxes. If they're slow, if they're late, if there's an in-rem property, the county doesn't get 100% of the money up front. Westchester, it does. That's what's guaranteed our AAA bond rating over the years. So you asked the question. The answer is we're doing a deep dive review. This, again, 11 days in. We're trying to get a good handle on it. I think what we're going to see, and we'll probably have, by the end of the month, beginning of next month, we'll be very transparent about it. I think we're heading for a very tough budget year in 2019. I think some of the decisions that have been made previously and not to raise taxes, even a small amount, did not give us the revenue necessary to meet obligations, and we're going to see it hit, and we're going to have some difficult times to come.
Before we turn to a new topic, what's the status of the airport and the deal with Macquarie?
We have no deal in place. There's a proposal on the table. The county executive's proposed deal, my predecessor, was not adopted by the Board of Legislators.
Does it die with his term?
Well, it dies. It sits there as a proposal. And now with the Board of Legislators just this week organizing its leadership, we're going to meet next week. We're going to talk about how they want to scrutinize the deal and provide time to discuss it. But for my purposes, I do not want to see any deal that gives up authority by the county and the people of the county to control the airport that's going to allow for expansion of the airport. You already have people that are very frustrated by the amount of air traffic that goes there already. And when you turn it over, now you get paid for it, and the payment helps you balance a budget. But for 40 years, you're giving away the store, and you have to be sure that that's what you want to do. I'm not at all sure that's what I want to do, but it'll be part of a public discussion and debate which people will be able to impact on.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. Remember, you can call in, email, tweet to ask questions, but we're going to talk politics, pragmatics, and progressives when we come back. Stay with us.
LMC TV for their 200th local live. I've said this before. When I was first on the board in 2001, the first 3 seats at the board meeting used to be occupied by journalists who were actually writing articles about the meeting. If you could take a shot at this room tonight, there's no media here. Thank God we have LMC TV to reach out to the community. Resolved, I, Thomas A. Murphy, Mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck, do hereby declare January 11, 2018 as LMC TV's The Local Live Day. In the Village of Mamaroneck, encourage all citizens to express their gratitude to LMC TV and The Local Live, whose top priority is keeping us informed.
Welcome back. We're talking to the new county executive, George Latimer. Columnist Phil Reisman recently called your election, very recently, a sharp left turn. Do you think it is?
Well, I think it was a number of factors that involved what happened. First of all, I don't think you can discount the reaction to the 2016 elections, where many people were upset about the outcome of 2016, that the national election, even though it was a popular vote one way, the electoral vote brought in Donald Trump and policies that were sharply conservative. And I think in this area, certainly not just in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, there was a reaction to that. And so we saw, I won by 70% in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, and overall in the county by 57%. So I think the Trump factor was a factor. I think the Constitutional Convention referendum triggered a turnout by labor unions. They felt that was an important issue for them, and that got us a very higher turnout as well. I also think, frankly, that in all of this, while there was an ideological element to this, people have underestimated what old-style representation means. I've worked communities for years. I've met hundreds and hundreds of people, and I've communicated with them and developed a relationship. And all of a sudden, those relationships give you a greater ability to withstand the traditional negative campaigning that comes. I was hit with everything but the kitchen sink, and then he hit me with the kitchen sink. And not only did I survive, but I did very well, because I think people say, I know this fella. I've seen him. He's been on TV. I've heard the quality of his thinking. And I'm not going to let negative ads shape the results. So I think there was an expectation, perhaps I was in a primary that could have been very divisive, and it wasn't. And this new indivisible movement can't be underestimated. It's a tremendous force.
We're going to get to that, but your inauguration, and we did a story on this earlier in today's show. It was very many respects like an anti-Trump rally, and I wanted to know if you saw your position that way. And we actually spoke after the inauguration. You skirted the question, but I'm going to ask you right now: do you see it that way?
Well, I think you heard the comments that I gave in my speech. It was very much, we're all in this together. We have to work across the aisle. We have to work cooperatively and positively. The inauguration was not a political rally. Individual speakers who spoke at it, given the freedom to express their opinions, expressed it in their ways. But if I may say immodestly, my speech was the centerpiece of the event. And in my speech, I set the tone for the administration, which is a cooperative tone. And I said specifically, no Democrat or Republican, no conservative, liberal, or moderate need be afraid that their voice is not going to be heard. Now, that's what I can control in terms of the dialogue of public issues in Westchester County. And people who know me know that that's been that's how I ran the County Board of Legislators 20 years ago. In this hyper-political climate, other people may have different strategies. I can't control what they think or say, but I can direct our administration and how we operate.
But how can you do that in the era of indivisible and resist, which were cheering, these speakers?
Well, you have to keep in mind, it's a question of your policies. I vetoed the gun show, and I believe that that's the right public policy. The fact that that is the policy of people who are progressive shows that that is in keeping with my philosophy. But in doing things that are progressive, that's not the same as picking fights ideologically with people who are conservative. It's very simple. I hold certain ideas. I'm going to advance those issues. I'm not looking to get into a verbal fist fight with people. I'm looking to advance what I think is right. The fact that there's an emotional charge, I think, is what you were pointing to before. It's a reaction to what they're seeing in Washington. I mean, let's be candid. When you go to the Twitter feed and you see the recent tweets from the president, he says provocative things every single day. It's a little hard to criticize the people who react to his provocative remarks with their provocative remarks. My strategy is tone the rhetoric down. Let's just solve problems.
We have some questions.
Yes.
I think they're on the same topic from different people. On the status of the Immigration Protection Act, which never got through the Board of Legislators last fall. If you guys could scroll down so I can see the other questions.
Let me answer them one at a time, so we'll say quickly. Immigration Protection Act, sponsored by Catherine Borgia. She is planning to reintroduce the bill. I believe there'll be some modifications. She's going to have some discussions. We will have members of the administration engage with the legislatures as they discuss it. The law may be changed in some ways to some degree. I would hope that at the end of the day, the product will be something that I can sign. But I want to be sure that the mission here is to make sure that there's a community policing aspect where police officers do their job, they're free to do their job, but their main job is not to do the federal government's job
of immigration enforcement, that their main job is to do the community policing that they're hired to do in the village of Mamaroneck, in the town of Mamaroneck, in the village of
Can you
Larchmont.
protect people who are in county jail from the federal government?
Well, it's not a question of protection from. It's to set a set of rules down that indicate what we're going to do. If the federal government comes in and they have a warrant in their hand, there is no protection from, sanctuary from that. The difference is, do we have our county police or our county correction officers do what Joe Arpaio did in Phoenix, which is take a local county sheriff's office in Mariposa County and make them an agency to root out documented status of immigrants. And I don't want that. What I want are our local county police to police their job. I want them to catch people speeding in front of the high school. I want them to take care of any kind of altercations and felonies or misdemeanors that they come across. I don't want them to do the federal government's job in immigration enforcement.
Okay, I'm going to want to move on to the next question we have, which is recently ICE raided 7-Eleven stores and arrested workers thought to be here illegally. Do you have a plan to protect immigrants' rights?
I think, as I said before, the things that the county government can do is to govern our particular law enforcement officials, our county police and our county correction officials. And I think that if we approach this in a reasonable, sane way, you will have a proper climate in our communities, in those portions of the communities where there are immigrants in Mamaroneck and in Port Chester and Ossining and so forth. If the federal government chooses to do a raid, we're not in a position to deal with that one way or the other. Neither is the state. It's a superior level of government with a superior level of judicial authority. But I think we set a tone in Westchester County in which we say we treat the people who are here as our brothers and sisters. They're sitting in the church at St. Vito's and they're worshiping at 12:30 at the 12:30 Spanish Mass. They are our brothers. Our job is not to root out who has proper documentation, who hasn't. We do have a responsibility to deal with criminals and with criminal behavior. And if a person is undocumented and they create a violent crime, then we treat them as a criminal. Not because they're an immigrant, not because they're not an immigrant, because of the behavior of the way they function.
What's your position on the Green Light campaign, which allows driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants?
I think you need to make sure that everybody who's behind the wheel of a car has been properly certified to drive. And we can't have people driving, in the shadows. There must be some method to be able to ensure that they are insured behind the wheel, that the vehicle is properly maintained, and that they have a proper legal way to drive. So I think this attitude of, you can't give them a driver's license. I had this conversation. Folks in the hierarchy of the Catholic Church support that type of situation. So it's not merely just a secular response. There's a response in other religious institutions that says do what is practical, do what is reasonable, make sure that the people behind the wheel are properly credentialed to do it.
One more question from a viewer. What's your position on North 60?
Well, the deal...
And maybe you can explain what that is.
North 60 is a piece of land in our Grasslands Reservation in the town of Mount Pleasant. A couple of years ago, the county struck a deal to have a development of that area. It involves some privately held land and some county-held land. 60 is the number of acres, and it's north of our campus where the medical center is.
And part of it was to be, if not industrial, it was business.
Well, it's meant to be like a biotechnical center to attract certain kinds of business. The deal is in place. The contracts have been signed. There's a revenue stream coming. As with any of these deals that have happened in my predecessor's administration, we want to look at it, make sure it's a sound deal. That program still has to go through local approvals now through the town of Mount Pleasant, and we'll be watching that approval process. But, there is a sense that if this is ultimately a good real estate deal all around, then we advance it. But I'm inheriting, as I am in Playland, as I am in the airport, as I am with Liberty Lines, as I am with a host of other things, deals that were struck by other people, and we want to give ourselves proper time, our new county attorney, John Nona, who's a terrific lawyer, and his team of people, to analyze these issues and make sure they're sound.
Okay. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that you will continue to come back to us and not be a stranger.
Anywhere up to 300 or 400, if that falls within my term, I'm happy to be back.
And we hope all of you will stay with us because we're just starting. When we get back, we'll take a look into the journey of making The Local Live your LMC TV community news show.
Every anniversary has a starting point, and ours was in 2013. Here's a look back at the story of some of the pioneers of truly local news in our community.
3, 2, 1, cue.
Good evening. It's Thursday, October 12th. I'm Maral Kathwari. Welcome to the Local Live. The American.
There was always the idea of creating a news show. And even when I was an intern, I was always hearing the whole concept, oh, we want to create a news show. And I never imagined that it was going to be me that was going to start this project.
Hello, I'm Michael Witch.
And I'm Maura Carlin, and finally, you're getting to see our premiere.
Local Live was not LMC's first newscast. That was Larchmont Mamaroneck Community News. And it was thanks to longtime producer Jeff Montanaro and broadcast professionals and LMC volunteers, Bill Littauer and Roger Norum, and people in the community like Sven and the late Glenn Gray were part of the reporting team. And when Jeff left as producer, we didn't have a newscast. And a couple years passed, and finally it was Eric Lewis and Maura Carlin on LMC's board who decided that we really needed to have one, and we had to find the volunteers to do it. And that's how the Local Live began. And it's only because of volunteers that we can make this show happen.
We wear many hats, so we not only report, we not only write, we edit, we go on the field, we are constantly juggling many things at once, which I think is rewarding because it's incredible to come in on a Monday and not really know where our week is gonna go. And then by Thursday we have put together an entire show with, the two of us, and depending on who's here during the week to help out. So it really is satisfying to know that two people can really make a change and make something pretty amazing.
We put things together. Shayla worked extremely hard in obtaining different volunteers and producers, training many different people from local colleges, and obtaining all of the news that she could possibly find in the community, and making a wonderful news show out of it.
The Local Live is celebrating its 200th show, and it's all possible because of all the volunteers that we have who invest hundreds of hours shooting and editing and recording, and also because of you, our viewers in the community who send us news and who support us by watching every week. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Local Live. I'm Rebecca Berman here in the studio celebrating our 200th episode of the Local Live with some Local Live alumni. Here with me are Ashley Ballone, James Levinson, and Alexandria Garcia. Now, 200 is a pretty big deal, and you guys all played a role in getting us here. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you started working here with the Local Live?
I'm Ashley. I started at the Local Live when I was at Iona, and after I graduated, I volunteered for a couple of years. I'm now an associate producer at A&E Network. So
wow, that's great.
Yeah, so starting out at the Local Live has definitely been a great stepping stone for me.
Very nice. James?
Yep, and so like she said, I'm James. I started on the Local Live when I was a freshman in college. I came back in the summer, really sort of interested in video, TV, not knowing where to start, and it turned out this was the perfect place to start. And now I'm still in college. I just finished up an internship at Hardball with Chris Matthews on MSNBC and plan to graduate school next year.
Wow, so you're in DC?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Awesome. Alexandria? How about you?
I started volunteering and interning at LMC TV, I would say like 3 years after I graduated Iona. And that was like about 2 years ago. And now I'm a reporter for BronxNet Television.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So I'm pretty excited. So it definitely helped me with a lot of things and with networking other people.
And you're on camera too. So you guys, working in media and getting your foot in the door, as you know, is really hard, whether you're graduating from college or in college, looking for internships. So what do you think the biggest obstacles facing aspiring broadcasters and journalists are?
It's very competitive. It's very competitive. I think, well, at least when I was in college, you know, we all knew it was going to be hard, but we didn't think it would be this hard or that competitive, you know, and especially coming from New York, being raised in New York, it's the #1 market. So a lot of times, if you want to be on air at least, you know, you would usually have to start off in a lower market in another state and then come back to New York. And there's very few that actually start in New York. So I would have to say it's definitely a hustle. But if, you know, if it's your goal and your dream to start off in New York, it just takes a lot of hard work and a lot of freelancing.
How about you, James? Even though you're in college, I'm sure you're still experiencing that, trying to get internships. And
Well, yeah, well, I haven't had to go for the particular hustle of finding an actual job yet, but for finding an internship, it still is pretty competitive. I was lucky enough to, when I got the chance to apply, that I got accepted, but just knowing everyone is looking for like an internship and everyone's sort of looking for one opportunity to one-up one another, go through, and it's a lot of commitment. I've talked to people who've worked in the actual programs, and when they start out, it's 60 to 70 hours a week. You're spending 6 days a week in the studio doing things that maybe you don't want to do as much and trying to work hard just to be able to, you know, like pay rent. So it's a very difficult like profession, and you really have to be dedicated in order to want to do it.
How far in advance did you send out your internship information?
I sent it out, I think it was must have been 2 months or so, and then sending out to like 20 different places or so, just trying to wait back for your response. And luckily I heard from a response, but it's always difficult. I sent out the year before like 50 of like different applications, and I didn't hear from any of them.
I
So
guess it might be the age or the year in college.
Yeah.
How about you, Ashley? What are your experience with this?
I think a big thing to keep in mind is like television is a very visual platform, obviously. So being in the classroom and then transitioning to whatever you learned, whether it was reading a book or writing a paper, is a completely different experience than working in the studio, in the control room, or being in field too. So it's really hands-on, and I mean, the studio is really your classroom. So just being able to adapt to different roles, I think, is extremely important.
And that's where places like the Local Live like really come in handy, because there's not a lot of places where it's very hard to find places where you can hone in on those skills by yourself, except if you're on your own. And this is the perfect place to sort of learn just the basics and the fundamentals, but just even going beyond just creating your own packages. When I was talking to certain people, they were like, wow, that's incredible, because most of the kids who come in here really have never done this before. So it's always a great advantage.
Well, you guys, we're going to take a break, but we'll be back to chat some more. And we're back. What have you taken from the Local Live to help you guys along the way? Ashley, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think that communities with local television stations like the Local Live is a great place for anyone to start who is very serious or even intrigued into seeing what television is like, just because the Local Live, you learn different roles, like the camera, being in front of the camera, writing, editing, and as you know, if you are interested in pursuing television later on, or even in the beginning of your career, you'll easily find that roles, it's not just one role, it's like a 3-in-1 role, that they ask for multiple tasks because they're looking for one person who can do all this stuff. So definitely being able to take on multiple roles is a huge advantage, you know, in wanting to do well and succeed in television.
How about you, James? How do you feel
honestly,
about it?
like Ashley said it perfectly, but if I could like add one thing, it would definitely be, you know, trust and independence that they put on it. So much of this now is not about, you know, working with like even other people, but it's more just relying on your own ability, because a lot of it is up to you as just being like a freelance journalist or finding opportunities. You have to do all that work yourself. So it's really important that they give you that same idea that you can do all this yourself. It's really helpful for in the future.
That's great. Yeah, they give you a lot of support here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's about being a one-man band, learning how to shoot, edit, be in front of the camera, not only wanting to be in front of the camera and doing well, but also doing well behind the scenes and getting that material and getting that footage and putting that together and making a story out of it. You know, not just presenting just facts. You know, it's the art of storytelling, and that comes, you know, with years of experience in due time. You know.
But you guys all felt they taught you that here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with honing, with editing, you know, I haven't edited since college, and when I started at the station, they threw me right into that,
Right.
and I brushed up on my skills on that, so that was great.
Right.
And with working with a teleprompter, you know, so that was also fantastic.
I think also learning deadlines too.
Okay.
Because deadlines is a huge factor, and especially whether you're working in daytime, nighttime, or it's pre-taped. I mean, you have to be quick, very quick, and learn, you know, how to do tasks on the fly in a fast-paced environment. So even though, you know, with the local live, it's not as quick. I mean, they give you deadlines. We need this, you know, by X day. So I think that's a great, that's great to know as well.
It pushes you further. You know, you turn like a paper late, as you said, you'll get like a B or a C. But if you turn an assignment late, you may lose your job. That's the difference. And I'd much rather not lose my job than get
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right, great, you guys. Thank you so much. So that's about all the time we have for today, even though it was, I know you guys have a lot more stories. I have a lot more questions to ask you, maybe for another time. But Ashley, James, Alexandria, thank you so much for helping us celebrate this 200th episode. And it was wonderful having you guys back in the studio. I'm sure you guys love that too. And once again, I'm Rebecca Berman, and stay tuned for more of The Local Live.
In this week's Spotlight, we want to share how one of our volunteers is now making it big, reporting local news. Anthony Carlo is a role model for aspiring journalists.
Whatever you want to be, don't ever think you can't do it. Because I've thought that before about myself, and I decided not to give up, and I proved to myself that I could. Students here at St. Anne's School are dancing, cheering, and waving their pom-poms. Make sure to stay with News 12 for any updates. Not only are they getting to help out the animal shelter, but they say dishes here, like steak and onions, are out of this world. I can't recommend the Local Live here enough. I mean, to come here and start out the way that I did and get all of the hands-on experience I needed so early on in my career, it was just integral to where I am now. From getting to anchor a show every Thursday and really learn how to be in a newsroom and how a newsroom works, how scripts are written, how to come in front of a camera and talk. All of the stuff that I learned here at the Local Live really took me far in life. And I thank my lucky stars every day, but I certainly want to thank the Local Live every day as well, because as I said, without this place here, I don't believe I would have been able to get to where I've gotten so early on in my career. You will learn everything from behind the scenes work to being in front of the camera, whatever you want. Can't talk enough, can't say enough good things about the Local Live here. Certainly one of the best experiences I've ever had.
I'm a reporter, I'm a producer, I'm a writer.
I am a news anchor. I am a producer.
I am a news editor.
I am the technical director.
I am a reporter. I am an anchor.
I volunteer for the Local Live because I'm a proud resident of Larchmont and Mamaroneck, and I like to give back to the community.
I volunteer for the Local Live because I believe in bringing the news into your living room.
I volunteer for the Local Live because I believe in leadership, support, and success in a community.
I volunteer at the Local Live because it's a fun learning experience, and I know each week I come, I can learn something new.
I volunteer for the Local Live because I believe in community television.
As a spring intern at the Local Live, I learned new skills like video, editing, and production, and furthered my skills as a writer. The internship gave me confidence as I embarked on my journey through the world of journalism.
We are the Local Live.
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 And now it's time for our Pet of the Week, courtesy of Pet Rescue. Mandy is a sassy 6-year-old cat. She enjoys playing with toys and loves being in cozy closures like her basket. She'd do well in a home with other cats, but this lady likes her independence. Buttercup is a 7-month-old Dachshund mix. She's shy but very curious. Not house-trained yet, but she has great manners. This Buttercup will break your heart only if you don't jump on the opportunity to adopt her. To adopt Mandy or Buttercup or to see other available pets, go to ny-petrescue.org. And that's a wrap on our 200th anniversary show. We're always looking for new volunteers and interns to help produce this newscast, and we love hearing from our viewers. You can email your inquiries and comments to thelocallive@lmctv.org. And remember, all of our shows are available anytime on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Tune in next Thursday for more local news and our roundtable about new beginnings. That's improving fitness and diet in the new year. And a reminder that the Farmers Market in Mamaroneck at St. Thomas Episcopal Church is this Saturday from 9 to 1. Bye-bye.